I mean, if he does not try to get out of the debates, and you know, Donald Trump and I both come from New York. In Brooklyn, we call him a punk in the streets. I don't think he wants to debate Kamala Harris because
I think he'll be afraid to debate.
Oh, he's a political
Kamala
punk. There's
Harris?
no doubt about it.
Really?
And I think that if his friend was promoting the bout Don King, it would be the prosecutor versus the felon. That's how you would promote it.
So, Gevin Reynolds, great to have you on the show. You're a former speechwriter. Yeah, thanks for making time. You're a former speechwriter for the vice president, and I would love to get your political analysis because the framing we just saw, I don't think gets any better for this kind of matchup. But before we go there, give us a personal sense of what the vice president is like. You were close to her. You spent a lot of time with her. You wrote speeches for her. I've met her a couple of times, but not nearly with the intimacy that that you had. What she liked to work for, what she liked to be around.
Absolutely, Ken. And thanks again for having me on. It's definitely been an exciting past 24 hours for all of us who are members of, as we call ourselves, the K-Hive. So all those who've worked for the vice president and, throughout her career in public service. And our group chats have been a buzz. Our group chats, our email lists. We're so excited for the vice president and also grateful to the president for all the accomplishments that he's delivered and the leadership that he's offered our country over the past 3.5 years. I think we feel like we're so far removed from the Donald Trump presidency, but we know he's knocking on the door. But I think it's worth remembering where we were when we started out in the Biden-Harris administration 3.5 years ago, and we owe the president a tremendous debt of gratitude for his leadership in bringing our country so far over the past 3.5 years. So I just want to say that, and I think we all salute the president and stand with him as he made the very difficult decision to step aside. But to the vice president, of course. So I think what a lot of people who've worked for her know is that over her lifelong career in public service, she's a fighter for the American people, and that's on every single issue. She was a district attorney in the Bay Area. She was the attorney general of California. She was a U.S. senator. And as vice president now, she's remained the same. She's remained constant and consistent through all of those positions that she's held. And you pick any issue, she has a long track record of fighting on behalf of the American people. And that's why she wakes up every morning, stands alongside President Biden, united in that mission. But I think what a lot of people might not know, if they haven't worked for her, is that she's incredibly funny too. She has a great sense of humor. And I do think that she has, suffered a great deal of unfair criticism on account of, in my opinion, her race and her gender, in the moments in which she's let herself shine through, which is very difficult to do, keep in mind, for someone who has been a first at so many junctures in her career. But I enjoyed being behind the scenes and seeing her, let her hair down, so to speak, and just being a really funny boss. But beyond that, she's incredibly intelligent. She's brilliant. I've been in the room to hear the incisive questions that she's asked and the comments and the feedback that she's offered us through the process of writing speeches for her. And so I'm excited for, between now and the election, for these stories to continue to emerge. Those who have worked for her or have had the chance simply if you look at her when she gets off Air Force Two and meets a crowd of folks gathered on the tarmac to greet her, just the enthusiasm, whether it's a young woman or an older man, no matter who it is, just the excitement that they have to meet the vice president and the excitement that she shows to meet them in return, I think it's really been palpable. And I'm excited for those stories to come out over the months ahead.
Yeah, that excitement is genuine. I don't know her other than the campaign events that I've attended where I've spoken to her very briefly, but she's in the room. She's
absolutely
there with the people who are with her. You described her as a fighter, not the first person to describe her that way. She really is at her best when she is given that opportunity to prosecute an argument, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's going back to the prosecutorial roots.
Absolutely.
Before I get your take on this, I want to roll the clip of her grilling Justice Kavanaugh. Here's the clip.
Can you think of any laws that give government the power to make decisions about the male body?
I'm happy to answer a more specific question. But
male versus female.
There are medical procedures
Okay? That the government has the power to make a decision about a man's body?
I thought you were asking about medical procedures
No,
that are unique to men.
I'll repeat the question. Can you think of any laws that give the government the power to make decisions about the male body?
I'm not thinking of any right now, Senator.
So, Gevin, this is Vice President Harris at her best. Of course, she's a senator in that clip. But this is what the moment calls for in prosecuting the case against Donald Trump.
Yeah, so that clip is from a few years ago, obviously, but we've seen considerable evidence, to use another legal term, of her continuing to prosecute the case over the past 3.5 years. In fact, a few weeks ago, she was speaking down at the Essence Festival, or Essence Fest, down in New Orleans, and this clip went viral. It's about a minute-long clip. She was in a moderated conversation. She was speaking about the stakes of this election, that this was just days after the Supreme Court handed down their, in my opinion, disastrous opinion on presidential immunity, which essentially gave Donald Trump the authority to do whatever he wanted to, as long as it was an official act, right? So she was speaking just days after that decision, and she reminded the audience, and she reminded all of those who watched the clip on social media, of just what's at stake in this election, where we have a candidate, Donald Trump, who has told us, who has not hidden what he intends to do in a second term. She reminded the audience of the fact that fundamental rights and freedoms are under attack right now by the MAGA movement led by Donald Trump. And so I don't know if we're going to have debates between now and November. I certainly hope we will. But if we don't, it's because Donald Trump is terrified to debate her because he knows that on that debate stage against Kamala Harris, a former prosecutor, she will prosecute the case against him better than anyone else can. She's a former district attorney who put bad guys like Donald Trump away. And I think a lot of us are excited to see her do that, metaphorically speaking, this November.
Yeah, I want to roll that clip for those who haven't seen it. I remember watching it when it blew up, and it hit me the same way it hit so many others. Here's the clip.
Sadly, the press has not been covering it as much as they should in proportion to the seriousness of what just happened, when the United States Supreme Court essentially told this individual, who has been convicted of 34 felonies, that he will be immune from essentially the activity he has told us he is prepared to engage in if he gets back into the White House. Understand what we all know. In 122 days, we each have the power to decide what kind of country we want to live in. Understand what we know. When there has been a full-on intentional attack against hard-fought, hard-won freedoms and rights. When I talk about the family that raised me, yes, they took me in a stroller as they were marching and shouting for justice, knowing that justice will not be achieved unless we are prepared to march and shout and fight for it. And one of the ways we do that is through our vote.
Hi, everyone. It's Ken Harbaugh, and I need to take a short break here to ask all of you watching and listening for a quick favor. I am starting my own YouTube channel at team_Harbaugh, where I'll be posting videos regularly, including bonus content. It's a great place to find both Burn the Boats and Against All Enemies episodes, including the full archive. That's going to take a while to upload, but it's all going to live there. I could really use your help growing the channel. Please consider subscribing today. The link is in the show notes, or just search for team_Harbaugh on YouTube. I really appreciate the support. Everything we do here depends on you. Thanks so much. One of her central arguments is around reproductive rights. And there's no one better in the Biden administration to make that point. What are her other strengths? How is she going to prosecute the case against a serial abuser, a convicted felon, a compulsive liar? I mean, she has a lot to work with. What would your advice to her be?
Truly, no, I think, Ken, the contrast could not be clearer, where you have Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, not only in terms of who they are, what they fought for their entire careers. Kamala Harris for the American people, literally Kamala Harris for the people when she was running, for that district attorney, and when she was in court every single day. And then you have Donald Trump, who is out for and fighting every day for no one besides himself. And so I think not only is there such a stark contrast between the two candidates, but there's such a stark contrast between what their two movements are about and the two visions that they have for this country, right? For Kamala Harris, again, she's about, like President Biden has been, and like the two of them have been throughout the past 3.5 years, on the economy, fighting to reduce costs for the American people, fighting to, and that includes on healthcare, right? With the Inflation Reduction Act that they had signed into law that capped the cost of prescription drugs for seniors. So on the economy, reducing costs, on climate, working to bring about the largest investment in climate that we've ever seen in our nation's history, on gun rights, gun control, really looking to hold the gun manufacturers accountable and pass legislation to keep our young people safe, because Kamala Harris believes that all people have a right to live free from fear and free from gun violence in their communities. You look on the other side, what's Donald Trump about on the economy? He's about cutting taxes for the rich. He's about letting corporate greed run willy-nilly, unchecked. On climate, he and his movement, they don't believe that climate change even exists. And when it comes to keeping people safe from gun violence, they care more about, if it was up to them, guns would have more rights than women do. So the contrast clearly could not be more stark, and it could not be more clear. I'm excited again for the vice president to get out there on those issues and on so many others and say, look, we each have the decision between two radically different visions for our nation's future, one in which we have more rights and freedoms, one in which we lower costs, not raise costs, one in which we want to keep people safer, not less safe in their communities, one in which women have the right to make decisions over their own bodies, on the government. On the other side, you have Donald Trump, who's pushing for the opposite of all of that. So,
do you think the selection of J.D. Vance as Trump's running mate was a strategic miscalculation? It's not as if he brings a moderating force to the campaign. He has called for a national abortion ban, no exceptions for rape and incest. He has said he couldn't care less what happens to Ukraine. It's why I wear this shirt as often as I can. Surely that is an exploitable vulnerability for the Trump campaign.
Yeah, I think so too. Look, I think if Donald Trump is serious about winning this election, he would have picked someone who, like you said, could have sort of moderated his positions, or someone who brought a little bit more balance to the ticket, right? Whether it's selecting someone who, was a woman or a person of color. Now, of course, just having those identities doesn't really necessarily sway anyone in terms of their vote. It's really, what are they about, as people, as candidates, certainly. But in picking J.D. Vance, Donald Trump doubled down on the MAGAism, on the election denialism that his base, so craves. Now, I think it's very interesting, because I think J.D. Vance is out for no one but himself. He will say or do anything to get power. If we go back in time, not that long ago, J.D. Vance was on the record calling people who vote for Donald Trump idiots. I'm paraphrasing, comparing Donald Trump to Hitler. Fast forward just a few years, and now Donald Trump has selected J.D. Vance to be his running mate. So J.D. Vance will do or say whatever he needs to get power. I think he has some very interesting positions. He's supported Lena Khan, the chair of the FTC, in her work to sort of take on, unfair sort of business practices. Do I think he's going to stand up for those issues on a ticket or in the White House with Donald Trump? Absolutely not. J.D. Vance is going to cower to whatever Donald Trump says is going to be the agenda. And I guarantee you the agenda will be, how can we make an economy that works for as few people as possible? Just those people who are rich, and those corporations, right, who are trying to pay as little as they can in their taxes. And so, I think that the selection of J.D. Vance will really backfire on Donald Trump, but that's okay. I'm excited to see who Kamala Harris selects as her running mate. I think whoever it is will have a field day with J.D. Vance on that election, on that debate stage, if J.D. Vance actually sticks with the debate. So yeah, not the person I would have chosen if Donald Trump is serious about winning, but he's not a serious person in general. So
he is not a serious person. Do you think he will find a way to wriggle out of debating Vice President Harris?
It's interesting. I mean, we saw Donald Trump post on Truth Social within the past 24 hours. He made a post suggesting that that the vice president is essentially an illegitimate candidate because the election was, in this case, now stolen from Joe Biden. So how the tables have turned. So I think what Donald Trump is doing is laying the groundwork for wriggling out of a debate with Kamala Harris because he's afraid. And if you go back to when Joe Biden was still the nominee, Donald Trump said, anytime, any place, I will debate Joe Biden. He's not saying that now. He's not saying that now. He's afraid of debating the vice president. And so I would not be surprised if no debates happen because he knows exactly what that debate would look like for him, and it wouldn't be pretty.
Can you put to bed this tired notion that the vice president is not tested? I don't know where it comes from other than what you alluded to earlier, prejudice, but given her record in California, the fact, and no one's talking about this, that she's already beaten Donald Trump once. She was part of a winning ticket, right?
That's right.
Can you address this notion out there that she's not ready? Because she is.
Absolutely. Look, Kamala Harris is proven, she's been tested, and she's ready. In fact, the job of the vice president is to be ready. And I think she, like I said earlier, has faced such unfair criticism. People saying, oh, where is the vice president? What is she doing? The fact of the matter is, the role of the vice president is not necessarily to be out there all the time, making the primetime speeches, giving the primetime interviews. And guess what? She's been doing those things. The role of the vice president is to be ready and to support the president, in whatever the president needs his or her running mate to do. That was the role of Joe Biden when he was vice president. That was the role of Al Gore when he was president. Name whoever. That's what vice presidents do. Their job is to be ready. Kamala Harris, as you said, defeated Donald Trump already as a part of the winning Biden-Harris ticket. Each and every day, she's been fighting alongside President Biden to deliver for the American people. All the successes that we attribute to President Biden, those are shared successes that have been brought about on behalf of the American people by President Biden and Vice President Harris. And during the primary season as well, let's not forget, President Biden and Vice President Harris got some 14, 15 million votes through the primary, showing that the people trust her. So I'm happy to put that notion, that myth to bed. And, I think if we're serious about beating Donald Trump, now is the time to unite behind Kamala Harris and recognize, as we just said, that she is ready, that she is tested, and that she is prepared to beat Donald Trump and to govern effectively.
On day one. Well said,
on day one.
Gevin. I want to end with this commercial from 2020, this ad from 2020. It's the kind of thing we need to see on repeat between now and the election. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Ken.
Sick of this? Well, think about this. He's a world leader in temper tantrums. She never loses her cool. She prosecuted sex predators. He is one.
Grab him by the...
She shut down for-profit colleges that swindled Americans. He was a for-profit college.
At Trump University, we teach success.
Literally. He's owned by the big banks. She's the attorney general who beat the biggest banks in America and forced them to pay homeowners $18 billion. He's tearing us apart. She'll bring us together. This is Trump. And in every possible way, this is the anti-Trump. So if that's what you're looking for in your next president, there's really only one: Kamala.